Good morning, students. I am Geeta Gangadharan, Associate Professor of English, Maharani's Arts College for Women, Mysuru. Today, I am going to discuss a Shakespearean sonnet titled, "Shall I Compare Thee to a Summer's Day with You?" This is the 18th sonnet of Shakespeare. We are going to discuss this sonnet in detail. It is from among the 154 sonnets written by the renowned playwright and poet William Shakespeare. These sonnets are further grouped into two. One group of sonnets are supposed to have been addressed to the poet's young friend, perhaps the Earl of Southampton or fair youth, and the remaining sonnets are supposed to have been addressed to the poet's beloved, called the Dark Lady. The sonnets of Shakespeare are perhaps written during the early 1590s. During this period, the theatres were closed due to plague. Now, there are two different types of sonnets. One, of course, is the Shakespearean or the Elizabethan sonnet, which is what we are presently discussing. The Shakespearean sonnet has 3 quatrains of 4 lines each. Now, 3 into 4 makes it 12 lines. And then the remaining 2 lines are called the couplet. So the first 12 lines are called the quatrains. There are 3 quatrains of 4 lines each. The last 2 lines form the couplet. In the quatrains, the poet presents the problem or shares the problem with his readers. And in the couplet, the problem is resolved. The other form of sonnet, other type of sonnet, is called the Petrarchan sonnet or the Italian sonnet, named after the Italian poet Petrarch, who introduced this form. When it comes to the Petrarchan sonnet, the first 8 lines of the poem are called the octave, and the next 6 lines of the poem are called the sestet. In the octave, the poet presents the problem. When it comes to the 9th line, there is a change in tone, and then this problem is resolved in the second half of the poem, that is the sestet. Now let us discuss the poem "Shall I Compare Thee to a Summer's Day" in detail. Before I start explaining the lines, let me read the poem. Please listen to it carefully. Quite a lot of details are self-explanatory, so pay attention to the details. "Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more temperate. Rough winds do shake the darling buds of May, and summer's lease hath all too short a date. Sometime too hot the eye of heaven shines, and often is his gold complexion dimmed, and every fair from fair sometimes declines, by chance or nature's changing course untrimmed. But thy eternal summer shall not fade, nor lose possession of that fair thou owest. Nor shall death brag thou wanderest in his shade, when in eternal lines to time thou growest. So long as men can breathe or eyes can see, so long lives this, and this gives life to thee." Now the poem begins with a question. the poet has a question, and the question is addressed to his friend. What is the question? The poet wants to know whether he could compare his friend to a summer's day. The summer here is a very pleasant experience because he is talking of the English summer. So he just wants to know whether he could compare his friend to a pleasant summer's day. The answer immediately follows. The answer obviously is a big no. Now, why does the poet find it inappropriate to compare his friend to a summer's day? The poem explains it to us. First point he makes is, he says, his friend is more lovely and temperate. The poet's friend is more beautiful and more temperate, more moderate, more balanced. Why does the poet say that his friend is more temperate? Now, we get more explanation in the following lines. The rough winds that blow shake the dear buds that are there in the month of May. And he also tells us that the summer season has a very short span of time. That's why he says, summer's lease has all too short a date. In other words, the poet wants to make it very clear that nothing in this world is permanent. Everything changes, everything alters, everything dies. So the summer season is no exception to this rule. And in the next two lines, he is talking about the sun. The sun is supposed to be the basis of all life on this planet. Now, he says, sometimes the eye of heaven shines too hot. The eye of heaven is the sun. Sometimes the sun shines very hot, extremely hot. And the same sun sometimes is masked by the clouds. That is why he says, the golden complexion of the sun is dimmed. So we find that the sun certainly is not moderate. It is sometimes very hot. It is sometimes masked by the clouds. And every fair from fair sometimes declines by chance of nature's changing course untrimmed. Everything that is fair slowly loses its fairness over a period of time. In other words, fairness gets subtracted from fairness. That is, to simplify, everything that's beautiful, that's healthy, that's glowing, everything starts losing its quality. Because with the passage of time, things do undergo a sea change. Nobody is an exception. And this change that is brought about can be the natural form of change, because if we think of ourselves, somebody who is very young and beautiful or young and handsome will gradually lose his or her strength or beauty as he ages. In other words, everything has to decay. Everything dies finally. And this can also happen just as a coincidence, by chance, by an accident, by any untoward incident that happens. However, once again the poet wants to make it very clear that nothing is permanent in this world. Everything is transient. Everything is mortal. Nothing is immortal. Nobody is immortal. But there is a paradox here. But thy eternal summer shall not die. He tells his friend that his eternal summer will never die. His everlasting summer. The poet's friend's beauty, maybe strength, maybe name and fame, it will never die. It is permanent, as against the impermanence of the rest of the world. And his friend will not lose the fairness that he owns. He is certainly an exception. How is he going to be an exception? The next few lines will explain that. Now we all know that all living beings in this world live under the shadow of death. So death can actually make very tall claims of how he is able to control everybody, because we live in his shade. Death is personified here, but then he tells that even death cannot brag in the case of his friend. Nor shall death brag, thou wanderest in his shade. Death cannot brag that the poet's friend rests in his shade. The poet's friend is an exception. When in eternal lines to time thou growest. So the poet's friend or the speaker's friend is growing in time. His name, his fame, his beauty, it is growing in time. It is not declining. That is the difference. How does it happen? In eternal lines, his fame, his name is increasing forever through the everlasting lines of this poem written by William Shakespeare. The last two lines of the poem beautifully sums up the idea. The point, look at the confidence of the point when he says, so long as men can breathe or eyes can see, so long lives this, and this gives life to thee. So what is the poet trying to communicate? As long as men can breathe, or as long as men can see. So, in other words, as long as there are human beings in this world, so long lives this sonnet written by William Shakespeare, which we are discussing at this point of time, will live as long as there are human beings. And this gives life to thee. This sonnet, or the lines of this sonnet, is going to make his friend immortal. Or in other words, this poem, the sonnet written by William Shakespeare, shall I compare thee to a summer's day, will immortalize his poet, because these lines are going to be here forever. That is what the poet concludes. That is the conclusion of the poem. So we see the poem begins with the question, shall I compare thee to a summer's day? The answer is no, because everything in this world has its own drawbacks. Everything alters, everything changes. The reality is that death and decay are essential part of life, and his friend is going to be an exception to the general rule, and that is through the sonnet of William Shakespeare. I hope you have followed the poem carefully. Please read it again and again. it will be an enriching experience. Thank you.